Hi guys! Today we're going to look more at coordinate grids. Yesterday you watched a couple of videos to just help you remember how we graph on a coordinate grid. Today I want to look at graphing on a coordinate grid when there are fractions involved. So you can see on the table that I have here, our x coordinates have fractions. Our y coordinates are whole numbers, but we have to know how to graph fractions, decimals, or whole numbers. So I want to look at a combination of fractions and whole numbers today. One thing we need to remember is that we get to decide when we're given a blank graph how we want to number our x-axis and how we want to number our y-axis. And we need to remember that they don't have to be numbered the same way. I can number the x-axis in a way that's appropriate for the x coordinates, and I can number the y-axis in a way that's appropriate for the y coordinates. So let's start by looking at the x coordinates. We have 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, and 5.5. Now we always start with the origin, which is where the x-axis and the y-axis meet, and that's always going to be 0, 0. Now when I'm thinking about a number line that has halves, I need to use that same idea for numbering my x-axis. So if I was going to number every line, if this is 0, then this would be 1/2, and this would be 1. But I don't have to number every single line. That gets a little hard. It gets a little messy. I can know that this next line is 1 1/2, and then I could just put my 2 here. This would be 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 5. Do you see how that would be helpful in numbering this x-axis for the data that I'm trying to graph? Now let's look at the y-axis. 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. So whatever I pick to number my y-axis, I have to be consistent. Whatever one space is equal to on my y-axis, it has to always be equal to that. So I can't say, well, I'm going to start here and make this 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. I can't do that because this space would be equal to 5 and this space would be equal to 2. And I don't get to do that. I have to be consistent. So I'm going to erase that, and I'm going to think about what would be appropriate for this set of data. I'm using whole numbers, so I'm going to just count by ones. But again, I'm not going to number every single line. It gets messy. I'm going to number 1. I'm thinking since my y coordinates are odd numbers, I'll just number every other line with the odd numbers. So if I was numbering them all, this would be 1, 2, 3, but I'm not going to number every line. So this would be 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. And I really could keep numbering, but I don't have to because that's not what's on my data. I could keep going and make this 15, 17, as high as I needed to go. But right now, this has plenty of space for me to graph the points that I'm asked to graph. So let's start with looking at the first set of coordinates. 2 1/2, 5. Now I have to remember when I'm graphing a pair of coordinates, an ordered pair, that I graph across to the x first and then I go up on the y-axis. Now, a lot of us have some fun little ways to remember that, and whatever way you choose, you have to be able to remember x comes before the y. So if you remember x comes before y in the alphabet, so I graph x before I graph y, that's fine. If you remember x is going horizontal and y is going vertical, you could remember that the x, I crawl along the x-axis before I stand up and go to the y-axis. You could remember all sorts of ways, but whatever you do, you have to remember x is horizontal, and then I go vertical on the y. X comes before y. So I'm going to start by going across to 2 1/2, and remember we said if this is 2, this is where 2 1/2 would be because the next line is 3. So 2 1/2, up to the 5, and I put a mark. I remember that on a coordinate grid, I have to put the mark where the 2 points intersect. In this case, the 2 1/2 and the 5 intersect right here. Now we have 3 1/2, 7. So I go across on the x-axis to the 3 1/2, and then I go up to the 7, and I put a point where those two coordinates intersect. 4 1/2, 9. I go across on the x to 4 1/2, up to the 9, and I put a point. The next one is 5 1/2, 11. Across on the x-axis to 5 1/2, up to the 11, and put a point. And then 6 1/2, 13. Across to 6 1/2, up to 13, and I put a point. Now, you've graphed with fractions. You have to remember that this table could represent any kind of information. We're not given anything here other than points to graph. So as long as we make sure we're following the rules of graphing, then we've done it correctly. Our scale on our x-axis is consistent. Each line represents 1/2. Our scale on our y-axis is consistent. Each line represents 1 whole. We've made sure that we've gone across on the x and then up on the y to find each coordinate. So we've followed all the rules and we've graphed with fractions. Great work.